Hello and welcome to the second part of our Java programming series. In the first part, we introduced you to what is Java programming. We also went further and showed you the tools that you need for you to program in Java, how to install the tools, and how to use your tools. And we even went further and wrote a basic Java program and showed you how you can be able to compile and execute the program. If you have not watched part 1, I have left the link to that video in the description below, and I have as well attached it up here as a card so that you can be able to watch it. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing so that you don't miss any part and any other video that we have to post in this particular channel. Also, like our videos, share them with your friends, and click on the notification bell so that you are notified anytime we release new content. So in today's session, we are going to talk about two critical items, and that is Java data types as well as Java identifiers, so that you can be able to write more dynamic Java programs. And we are going to start with Java data types. And basically, we use a lot of data in programming, and this data can be organized into certain categories. So when we talk about data types, we are talking about how this data is organized, or the nomenclature of how this data is classified in the various programming languages that we have. And in Java, data types belong to two main categories. We have what we call the primitive and non-primitive. Primitive refers to the most commonly used data types or the basic data types. Non-primitive are the non-basic data types. And in most cases, non-primitive data types will be collections apart from strings. Now, primitive data types or the basic data types can further be classified into numeric and non-numeric. Numeric data type refers to data that deals with numbers. Non-numeric data type, on the other hand, is data that does not involve numbers. So when you talk about non-numeric data type, we are talking of things such as character. When you talk of character, you're talking of something like A, B, those letters of the alphabet. Those are individual characters. Or when you talk of something like a password that is considered to be a collection or must be put together, that is also considered to be a character. Then we have Boolean. Boolean deals with values that are either true or false, 1 or 0. Then when you go to the numeric data types, we have integers. Integers deal with whole numbers such as 1, 5, 7, 1000, and so on. Then we have what we call floating point. Floating points deal with decimals or fractions. And these floating points can further be classified into two main categories. We have the float and we have the double. The float mainly deals with decimals that are not so long, while double can be able to accommodate both whole numbers as well as decimals, and it has a wide memory space, and thus it can accommodate a wide range of decimal values. So when we are dealing with things such as we are trying to find an average of three numbers, and we are not sure if this average is going to be a whole number or a fraction, then in that case we tend to use double. In rare cases will you find ourselves using floating point in Java, because standard practice in the industry is that people tend to use double because of its capabilities. Then we have others such as under the integer categories such as byte, short, long, and so on. And the key difference between them and integer is the number of values that they can be able to accommodate once you use them. But the most important thing for you to remember here as a beginner in Java is that whenever you are talking about data types, you are asking yourself, this kind of data that I have, which data type can it belong to? So if you have data such as numbers, whole numbers, then you know that it belongs to integer. If you have decimals, then you know that it belongs to either double or float, but I would advise that you go for double. When you go to the other side, we have the non-primitive data types. And under non-primitive data types, we have strings. Strings deal with uh, things such as names of people, or when you have a collection of several characters. Maybe you want to print out the name of a city, that is a string. And strings are very much used, especially when you are dealing with graphical user interfaces, because anything that you input in a GUI is usually captured in form of a string. However, as we move towards this series, in the advanced stages, you'll find that you can be able to convert from one data type to another. You can be able to convert from a string to a double, and from a double to a string. Then we have arrays, and arrays is a collection of data type which contains related elements that are stored at a single variable. Then we have classes, and we'll even have others that we are going to learn along the way. But for purposes of us studying this lesson, I would like us to first remember the following data types. That we have the character data type, the Boolean data type, the integer data type, we have the double data type, we have the string data type, and under the integer, we can still have the short and the long data types. So having known that, let us now proceed further and talk about identifiers. So identifiers, they are basically names that are given to certain elements in Java. And these names could be names of classes, names of variables, names of arrays, names of methods, also known as functions, and so on. And there exist some rules that we must follow when we are naming these identifiers in Java programming, so that we can make sure that all our identifiers are uniform and they can be recognized by our IDs and our JDK as identifiers. And these rules are as follows. All identifiers should begin with a letter, alphabetical letters A to Z. And when we talk about these letters, we mean that all our identifiers can either have the alphabetical letters, they can have the currency symbol, or they can have an underscore. That one is allowed. Then after the first character, identifiers can have any other combination of characters, which include numbers. Now, the other rule is that identifiers must be less than 255 characters. No spacing is allowed. When we talk about spacing, if you have to use two names, such as you want to have an identifier known as my name, you don't put space between my and name. And if you must use some space for purposes of maybe making it easy for you to read, what you do is you put an underscore. Then keywords cannot be used. And we have quite a number of keywords in Java. The rule of the thumb is anything that you write in Java and appears in blue or green, that is a keyword. So when you talk of things such as public, private, double, string, and so on, all these are keywords. You cannot use them when you are naming identifiers. Then the same name cannot be repeated within the same scope. So if you have a simple program like what we did last time, and we are going to demonstrate it even today, that you cannot be able to repeat the same identifier name within that scope. If it's a class, you cannot be able to repeat the same identifier name within a single class. If it's a function, you cannot do the same. And most importantly, identifiers are case sensitive, such that if you talk of age in lowercase and age where A is in uppercase, then those are two totally different identifiers. If you talk of something like salary and S in lowercase and salary S in uppercase, those are two different identifiers. And now, having said that, it would only make sense if you go ahead and see how you can be able to utilize these data types and these identifiers in a practical program. If you'd like to learn more about these data types and identifiers, I would advocate that you download a tutorial PDF and you read it, because this is more of a crash program that aims at taking you directly to becoming a master in Java within a short period of time. Therefore, we may not dive so much into a theoretical aspect of it. So let's go ahead and see how we utilize these identifiers and how we utilize these data types in an actual program. So open your NetBeans and we start. Welcome now to the practical part or the lab session for this particular part 2 of our series. So we have just discussed about data types and identifiers, and now it's time for us to put them into practice. I believe that you remember this program from part 1, and this is just the program that we were using. Output some values like hello world, subscribe to the channel, and so on. And now we want to apply the concept of data type and string, data types and identifiers rather, in this particular program. If you don't have this program with you, you can just go ahead and create a new program by going to files, and then you create a new project, and then you follow the procedure that we have demonstrated in part 1. So I'll just remove these sections here in the body of my main method, so that we can start working on our project. So let us start by seeing how exactly do we declare identifiers. And in this case, we are going to focus on variables, because we say that variables is one of the identifiers. And we say that a variable is a name given to a memory location that is reserved in memory to store a certain value. Now, when you are declaring a variable in Java, there are certain rules that you must follow. A variable must start with the data type that it belongs to, then followed by the variable name, and the variable name must follow the rules of naming identifiers, and then you can decide to initialize it at that point, or you can decide to initialize it later. Have a look at this. Let's say, for example, I want to add two numbers, number 1 and number 2, and then get their sum. So I would come here and say integer, that is the data type, num1 start for my number 1. Then I can decide to terminate there, and then go ahead and say integer num2 start for my number 2, and then I can terminate there. And then I can come here and say integer sum start for the total, then I terminate. And then I go ahead and say num1 is equal to 5, I terminate like that. Num2 is equal to maybe 10, terminate like that. And then I say sum is equal to num1 plus num2, like that. Then I can come here and output sum. So system dot out dot print line, then I can output sum. So in this case, what have I done? Here I have created a variable known as num1, and this variable belongs to a data type integer. So what is going to happen in the background is, in my memory, a place will be reserved for this particular variable, and the size of this space depends with the size of the integer data type. If I want a very lengthy space, then I would rather use the long type rather than the integer data type. The same case will be done for num2, and the same case will be done for sum. Now, if you look at this, I have not initially assigned num1 a number, or num2, or even sum, I have not assigned it a value. So when I come to this line over here, I do what we call initialization. Initialization is where you assign a variable a value. So I have assigned num1 a value which is 5. I've also assigned num2 a value which is 10. And I've assigned sum a value which is basically the summation of num1 and num2. And now here I want to output the sum. So if I run this particular program, it's going to give us an output, and the output that's going to give us is basically 5 plus 10, which will be equal to 15. And since you are running it for the first time, it needs to load the JDK and the JRE, and it may take some time, but it has finished. You can see here the output is 15. So this is one way of utilizing data types and variables, or declaring variables and initializing them. This way results to so many lines of code, and it could be considered to be primitive by advanced programmers. But it is an ideal way, especially if you are a beginner and you want to minimize your confusion, and you also want to be certain that what you are doing is actually correct. And it will also become more critical when you want to input these values from the keyboard. So let's go ahead and see the second way. The second way in which you can do it now is to just come here. Let us minimize the lines of code. We come here and say num1, comma, num2, and sum. If we do that, what will happen is that we have declared num1, num2, and sum in a single line. But for you to be able to do this, you must make sure that all those three variables belong to the same data. Take note of that. So if we run this program, the output is going to be the same. The output is going to be the same. But now, this one is also limited because in some cases, you'll be working with variables that are not of the same data type. And for purposes of you avoiding confusion or resulting in syntax errors, you go for the third method, which I find to be more ideal, which is this one. Just come here. You declare a variable and initialize it. So you say integer num1 is equal to 5. Integer sum is equal to 10. Not sum, sorry. Integer num2 is equal to 10. Then you say integer sum is equal to num1 plus num2, like that. So if you execute this program again, you still get 15. But this one looks more decent, looks more organized. And if you are just declaring static values like 5 and 10 that we have over here, I would advocate that you go for this method. So what can we see here? Here we can see that we have a data type known as integer. We can see that we have a variable known as num1, and we have assigned it a value, and we have used this particular value over here and summed it with the value that is available in num2 to get the value of sum. So in basic terms, in this session, you have been able to write a program that can be used to add two numbers. Now, there are some elements that we're seeing here, the equal sign and the plus sign. These elements, we call them operators. And operators are very critical because they help us to perform operations. And there are quite a number of operators that exist in Java. And I'm going to leave a link to the various operators in Java in the description below so that you can be able to access them and read about them. Let's go ahead and modify this program and ask ourselves, what if we wanted to find the average of these two numbers? So you just come here and now declare another variable known as average. But then we need to ask ourselves, here 10 plus 5 is equal to 15. So the average is most likely to be a fraction because average is equal to sum divided by 2. So what is the most ideal data type? And in this case, the most ideal data type is a double. So we come here and say double average is equal to sum divided by 2. Sum divided by 2. Then we can come here and output system.out dot print line. Then you can say average is equal to, then we use a plus sign there to concatenate. Then we call the variable known as average. Just to, there is a typing error, let me fix it. Print line, yeah, now it's okay. Just to make it clear, for purposes of avoiding losing any of my audience here, in this output statement, I want you to compare this output statement, the second one, from the first one. In the first one, we just came here and put the variable that we want to output, which in this case is sum. The second one, we want to be more clear exactly what has been outputted. So you can be able to put some text in your output statement that, like we have over here, and say average is equal to, then use a plus sign. When a plus sign is used here, or whenever a plus sign is used in any place where a string is involved, it is used for concatenation. Concatenation simply means linking two parts. And in this case, we are concatenating this string that we have over here, statement average is equal to, with the value that is contained in the variable known as average. So we can do the same for sum for purposes of making it clear. And we say sum is equal to, then we put a plus sign there, concatenate. So if we run this particular program now, we can see sum is equal to 15, average is equal to 7 point, average is equal to 7.5. You can be able to see that clearly. So having said that, now we can be able to move further, and even modify this program and say, let's now talk of a more ideal case. Let's say you want to find something like the area of a circle, And when you want to find the area of a circle, you have the radius and you have the pi, and you want to use the formula pi r squared. So how can you go about it? The very first thing you need to ask yourself is, which data types do these values belong to? The first one is a pi. So if you're not sure about the data type, just use a double to be fair for you. You can say double pi is equal to, maybe let's take a pi value of 21. Then we say double, or we can talk of double or either constant, whichever you want to use. This should be radius, not pi. Double radius, you can just use r is equal to 21. Then you can come here and say double pi is equal to 3.142, like that. And then you can say double area is equal to pi multiplied by r multiplied by r again. And once you do that, you're going to get your area. So you can come here and output your area. You say system dot out dot print line, and you say area equals, and then you can put your area over there. And once you run this particular program, you're going to find that this will be your area. One can decide to modify it further. You can just come here and say is equal to pi. You put some curly braces there, and you say is equal to pi multiplied by r times r in brackets for purposes of you having an r squared. And if you run it, it's going to give you the same output. And you can see that if you run it, true, we are getting the same output. So what have we seen here? We can see how you are able to declare variables. Like here you can see you have variable r, pi, and area, how you are able to use the various data types. And you can also be able to see how we are able to output our variables. So we now need to go ahead and write more advanced programs. What if now in this case, I want to capture these values from the keyboard. I really do not want to define the value of R here. I want to capture it from the keyboard. For you to learn how to capture it from the keyboard, watch out for our next video in the part 3 of our series, and we are going to show you exactly that. In the meantime, continue practicing on this, and I look forward to seeing you in part 3 of our series. Thank you so much.